Hi, I'm Jordan, the Cinema Paleteer, bringing you colorful commentary on the films you love and hate, with a few twists along the way. Sometimes our opinions will differ, but I'm just supplying you with food for your own cinematic palate. For my first episode, I will be talking about the should-have-been box office flop, now Disney Plus crown jewel of the month, Artemis Fowl. And how I do my reviews is a little bit different than some. I might go into some details about other parts that you might not be sure about. And then the thing that I do that's really special is I'll tell you the one thing that I would change that would take my review from somewhere lower to a whole new spectrum. And how I do my reviews is in 5 parts. The first part being story, characters, animation / design of the set, just the overall aesthetic, and then the theming, and then the final part is, of course, my final thoughts, along with that special one thing that I would change. So let's jump right in with story, probably the worst part of this whole film. My girlfriend told me a little bit about these films. She read the books beforehand, and she said that they're a pretty good story. They're not as up to Harry Potter level, but they're still really good. And so I was a little bit optimistic, but I was also a little bit worried because I did a little more digging and I noticed that this first film is a combination of the first book and the second book, which in my mind scares the heck out of me because that means we're going to put way too much content in what's probably an hour-and-a-half film. And sure enough, I went in with high expectations, but that is exactly what the film did. It's trying to put so much into a short amount of time that we are hopping left and right from different characters, building relationships so fast, but this story just never really gets going. No one really is understanding of their role. No one really changes as a dynamic character. The story's all about Artemis Fowl Jr. and him kidnapping a ferry police officer so he can bring back his father who's being kidnapped by someone else. I guess that's a logical thing. We don't really get into the logic of it all. We just are going after this treasure that for some reason is very popular, and that's really what the film's about. And because this plot is so bare bones but torn up, they have to revert to something that's really awful, which is they have a narrator that's talking directly to the camera that's giving you all the exposition of the characters because they don't have time to give you any of the characteristics of these characters. So you have Josh Gad's character, the mole man, telling you exactly that Artemis Fowl is charismatic but doesn't care about his schoolmates. And he's staring right at you as much as I'm staring at you right now. And it's very off-putting, and I just did not enjoy that type of filmmaking. I think Kenneth Branagh was having a real trouble putting this story together, and I don't blame him. This is a very challenging story. It is, in the first book, from what I was told, the character is not very likable. He's almost your villain. I mean, he's kidnapping a good-hearted fairy to get what he wants. And Disney decided to speed up the process and make sure that he's a hero right away and that he's friends with the fairy that he captures and everything goes well. So doing that, I think we're doing a disservice to the characters, but it's what they did and we have to live with it now. But to get a little further into these details, let's jump into characters. There's quite a few different characters. I mean, of course, we'll start with the title character of this film, Artemis Fowl Jr. He is this horrible little actor that's just not even really shown in the film. I feel like they found out partially through that this kid couldn't act, and they were like, all right, let's take him out as the lead and let's make the fairy actress, who's actually quite good, the character who's playing Holly Short. She's got a lot more charisma to her, so they kind of revert more to her than Artemis Fowl. So the film should have just been called The Adventures of Holly Short or something like that, with her good friend, the 12-year-old who can't act. Holly Short's character really tries to be the lead of this. I mean, we try to build this little bit of mystery to what happened to her father. We know he's dead, and she's trying to uncover the mystery of how that happened. She knows that it has a connection with the human world. Her character has empathy. You see that in the scene where she saves the little girl, and how she kind of befriends Artemis Fowl in about 2 seconds. She must be friendly because he says nothing to get her friendship, and yet all of a sudden they are best friends. So her character, with the limitations of this film, tries to have a story arc, and I'm at least thankful for that in the slightest. The next character, I don't know if I'm a Josh Gad fan. I have enjoyed his work in Beauty and the Beast as LeFou and a few other roles, of course, Book of Mormon and some of those sorts of things. But I did not like him in this film. I think it started off right from the beginning with him being the narrator and staring at us in the screen, but also taking this character that, from what I had read before, seems like maybe a little bit more of a mysterious character, a little more of a tougher character, and we have this whimsical, heavy guy who's constantly smiling, constantly begging to laugh at him, and it's just not funny. And then to top it all off, we have this transformation of him, which I don't know if this is in the book. If it is, I kind of still don't agree with it. They turn a dwarf. He's a giant dwarf, which is, I think there's a joke there. They kind of try to get at it. But he mutates his mouth and parts of his body, and it is one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen. It's like seeing Beetlejuice again, but in like full 4K HD with way too much color saturation all around me, and it scared me. The next character I want to talk about is the last of Artemis Fowl's sidekicks, and that is Butler, played by Nonzi Anusi. Excuse me if I said that wrong. I do really like this actor, but I gotta admit I haven't heard his name pronounced too many times. But he did an okay job. It was a very stereotypical role, you know, of the protector / emotional friend to your lead character. And he was fine. I think they kind of cut him out a little bit more than they probably should have, because this character could have kicked a lot of butt. He could have been fun. He could have been the real reason, you know, the real teacher of Artemis Fowl, since his father was not in the picture much. I mean, it would have just been a nice compliment, maybe a bigger character, bigger role to have. And I think they kind of missed out on him a little bit. But once again, I think he did an excellent job being the character that he is. Now, my final two characters, I'm going to have some drastic, either short or long opinions about. And that is Colin Farrell and Judi Dench, playing Artemis Fowl Sr. and Commander Root. These two actors are probably some of the crown jewels of the film. They really represent, you know, quality that's coming to this film. Sadly, neither actor really gets into that. I would say Colin Farrell looks like he's barely in the film, and he rushes through this pretty quickly. The only nice nuance we get with him is that he doesn't have to do an accent for this film. He didn't really have to work. He just had to show up. You know, he has an Irish accent. He's Irish in the film. He looks great, and he has a nice time. He can always look emotional to people. So he kind of phones in the role, but it's Colin Farrell, so it looks great. The other one, this is where I have a lot to talk about. Judi Dench. What is Judi Dench doing with her career now? I don't know if no one's giving her good roles anymore, or she has been so brainwashed to think that she has good roles now. Because this one, as Commander Root, the head leprechaun of the police force, this is a joke. And her most recent role in Cats as the lead cat, also a joke. And yet she takes both of these roles so seriously. I mean, you can feel the gravitas of a Judi Dench role, even when it's pure trash like this. I mean, when she steps off of that spacecraft and says, "Top of the morning," I'm sorry, I'm not doing it justice, "Top of the morning," I wanted to cry. And it wasn't because it was this emotional moment. It wasn't because this character can deliver things. It's because we are seeing the destruction of one of the United Kingdom's greatest actresses. She cannot take this any more seriously, and this role is a joke. I mean, it's a leprechaun leading everyone, and she's on spacecrafts. We're in this underground world. She's telling other elves that they better stay in line because what? They'll be thrown into this jail where apparently people can go in and out of the jail. She says she has people above her. We never see who's above her in the film. I mean, this character has no depth at all. And, she says she's 800 years old. She's the least wise person I've ever seen. And then they give her just endless cheesy lines. I mean, of course, Top of the Morning stands out above anything, but it's just a cheesy overall character. And because she puts so much energy and so much emotion into these characters, it only amplifies the stupidity. But I want to move on to the one thing that I don't think is as problematic in this film, and that is the design, the look of this film. I gotta tell you, I actually relatively enjoyed it. In the beginning of the film, we get a lot of Ireland landscapes, and it's beautiful. We see the house, we see the ocean, we see the school, and we see just a lot of the groves and stuff on the island. And it looks great, and there's this accompanying score with it that sounds beautiful. I'll get into that a little later, but it really suits the tone of it. And then we go into the fairy world. And the fairy world's not bad, obviously it's got a little bit of that Marvel feel, like we're going somewhere else to a city we've never been to before. It's blue, and there's spacecrafts, and there's bright oranges being blasted in. The color theory on this is great. But yeah, it's a good look to it. The only thing that I didn't like about it is they kind of couldn't choose in the fairy world what kind of space/future they were going with. Obviously, they're technologically advanced, but they had like spaceships that came to Earth, and they had these time freeze machines that all look very electrical, all look very, very far off in the future. But then they have these devices that they use in two parts in the film, one to bring Holly Short and one to bring Mitchum Diggums up to Earth. And it's like this basically metal box that they shoot through a volcano when everyone else comes up through spaceships. So that's something very steampunk-like, I would think. And yet everything else has a very high sci-fi feel to it with high functionality. And yet this is the most archaic thing ever, shooting people through a volcano with no real stopping power. They have to either be taken out of it in midair or fly out of it. I mean, that's kind of weird. But otherwise, the look is really good. The manor looks great. It's got a very sleek feel to it, and a lot of stuff goes on there. The CGI is pretty good, It's definitely that top-notch quality that Disney will always bring you. So yeah, the look is good, and this is where I would say the best part of the film is. So let's get into one of my usual favorite parts of a film, which is the theming, where the real heart is, where the emotion is, what will bring you in with the laughs and the crying and everything that you need from a film to really come out of this feeling like something changed you. Artemis Fowl doesn't have that. It wants to. I mean, they saw it in the book, but it's not there. I mean, I think whoever composed this film did a lovely, lovely job. It felt like I was at Disneyland on Soarin' Over California, but at the same time, watching the movie Brave. It was a combination of those kind of scripts. You have the Irish feel, but with the epicness and worldliness of something that's a world travel video. And that was cool. It looked nice, it sounded nice. I mean, it mixed well with the landscape shots in the film. So that was cool. But the big theme that I saw in this film was maybe the devotion for child to parent. How Artemis Fowl really wants to help his father, wants to get his father back. Holly Short really wants to almost avenge her father and set his name right. This is something that is through the film and you feel the characters really care about. But anything beyond that is few and far between. You could say the presence of good and evil weighing against them is somewhat there. And then, of course, because this is a film about people who steal things, greed is definitely a part with them wanting the treasure, with other things being stolen that's briefly mentioned over. And yeah, that's another reoccurring theme in here. But because they spend so much time trying to make this a cohesive story, we really don't get into the theming here. And I almost thought for my first episode, let's not put a theming category in. But I think it's just a little stronger to say why there's not really any themes in this film. So now, time for the part you all been waiting for. The one thing I would change to take this film from what's probably a 0 to a hero. And that is cutting the film right after Artemis captures Holly Short and they send Mitch Diggums in to take care of things. I think this would have brought this film to a whole new level because they're clearly trying Disney to make this film like a Harry Potter. They're trying to build a legacy out of it. I think that was the original goal. I understand that this film has gone through a lot of different iterations of the years, and I think they just thought, let's put something out. But there's potential here. There really is. I mean, if they would have cut the film there, you would have figured they would have had an hour-and-a-half film, would have been enough time to go over your 5 or 6 lead characters, maybe build a little bit of character for each one of them, understand their goals, and then by sending in Mitch Diggums and maybe never explaining much about him to that point, you would have added pure mystery to a character and wonder where the film is going from there. I think by hiring Josh Gad for that character really does hurt it because this guy doesn't bring any mystery. He always looks like he's smiling and bringing a laugh, and that with this character in my version where he comes in at the end, you can't have this guy who's already giggling make it interesting. You need a little bit of mystery there. And that's really what would have made people come back and seen a second film to see how Holly Short's going to make it out of the kidnapping. Is Artemis Fowl going to be a redeemable character? I mean, that's the risk. Artemis is not going to be a lovable character if you end it right there. But people are going to wonder, and that's a risk that I bet you will pay off. But of course, with this idea, I think there probably would have needed to be a director change. I mean, I like Kenneth Branagh as an actor, but I gotta say his directing is not very good. I think he takes European class and style and makes it a very generic American studio-based film. And I hope it's not just him because I think he's more talented than that. But all of these films become boring and generic and sometimes pretty convoluted as well. So yeah, I think we would have needed to change that too. But that's just included in my one change. That's not a whole separate change. I think one change will affect other parts as well. So for my final thoughts, I think this film had a lot of potential, especially with my version, but it didn't live up to that at all. It fumbles trying to put together a convoluted story and then puts a bunch of actors who didn't get enough time practicing, especially Artemis Fowl Jr. and maybe Josh Gad. And it just doesn't turn into anything anybody really wants to watch. Not even a child's really going to want to watch this because they're not going to know what's going on. And that brings me to my review of this. And it's probably about a 2 out of 10 in my opinion. You know, it looks great. The design is really good. And like I said, I really enjoyed that classic Irish score that they gave it through most of the film. But that's really it. Everything else, I mean, this is going to fade into the back of my memory really quick. I'm not going to remember this film for very long, and I hope none of you do either. And I think the filmmakers were expecting that as well. So that's where I'm going to leave this film at, and I hope you enjoyed this review. I plan on doing a lot more of these, and if you enjoy it, please leave a comment. I want you to subscribe and, and just give me your feedback. Let me know what you want me to do next and what you thought of things. And thank you so much, and have a good day.